Coffee explodes across my bare feet as the mug shatters. 9:23 a.m., and my daughter has sold my beach house for $420,000. 45 years of sacrifice traded for a forged signature. She thinks I'm confused. She doesn't know about the $2.8 million or the recording. What happens when I call back? We're going tomorrow, Mom. I sold your beach house. The words exploded through my phone like shrapnel, each syllable tearing through 45 years of carefully built trust. My daughter's voice carried that rehearsed coldness I'd come to recognize, the tone she used when she'd already made decisions that would destroy my world. Because what Camilla didn't know, what nobody in that perfectly orchestrated conversation knew, is that I had $2.8 million hidden in an offshore trust that her dead father set up 20 years ago. And I was about to use every penny to destroy her life. My name is Gloria Whitman. I'm 70 years old, and for 45 years I taught high school literature in Atlanta's public schools. I spent my life believing that raising a good daughter was my greatest investment. But Camilla, or Camille as she's called herself since marrying Iger Thompson, because apparently our family name wasn't sophisticated enough, never learned the value of what can't be bought. I'm so happy you're here listening to this. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you raised, someone you sacrificed everything for, hit that like button. While I tell you how a 70-year-old retired teacher brought down a financial conspiracy, subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I want to know how far stories like this reach. Now let me tell you exactly what happened when I hung up that phone and discovered the truth about my own daughter. It was Tuesday morning, November 14th, 2024. I was in my small kitchen in Atlanta, the smell of apple pie filling the air, when my phone rang at exactly 9:23 a.m. Camilla's voice came through crystal clear, carrying poison wrapped in maternal concern. Mom, I forgot to mention it yesterday, but I used that power of attorney you gave me at Christmas. We needed the money urgently. $420,000 went straight into our joint account. It's the best thing for everyone. My hands went numb. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the linoleum floor in an explosion of ceramic and hot liquid. But I barely noticed the mess spreading across my feet. What power of attorney? I whispered. The one you signed, Mom. Don't you remember? You were having those memory lapses, and we thought it was important to get your affairs in order. Memory lapses. The lie tasted metallic in the air between us. I had never signed any power of attorney. I had never experienced memory lapses. And the Charleston Beach House, Richard's final gift to me, the place where we'd scattered his ashes in the garden, had just been stolen by my own daughter. Camilla, I never signed... Mom, please don't get confused again. Igor and I have it all documented. The sale went through yesterday. The buyers were so happy to get that old place. Old place. She called the sanctuary where I'd spent my happiest moments with her father an old place. The house where she'd learned to read, sitting on the porch swing while I graded papers and Richard tended his roses. The house where we'd celebrated every Christmas until he died, where she'd brought her first boyfriend to meet us, where she'd announced her engagement. I have to go, Mom. Igor's waiting. But don't worry. You won't have to deal with property taxes or maintenance anymore. We're handling everything now. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, 70 years old, surrounded by broken ceramic and the ruins of my trust, feeling something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. For 45 years, I'd taught teenagers about dramatic irony, when the audience knows something the characters don't. Now I was living it, because Camilla had no idea what Richard had really left me. 20 years ago, when the doctors first mentioned his heart condition, my husband had called me into his study. Gloria, he'd said, pulling out legal documents I'd never seen before, there's something you need to know, something I've been building for us. 4 properties along the South Carolina coast, purchased quietly over 15 years through a trust based in the Cayman Islands. Commercial real estate, beachfront lots, rental properties that generated income I'd never even seen because Richard had been reinvesting everything. Why the secrecy? I'd asked. Because someday you might need to protect yourself from the people who should protect you, he'd said, kissing my forehead. Money changes people, Gloria, even people we love. The trust was worth $1.2 million when he died in 2010. By 2024, With careful management by his attorney Harold Jennings, it had grown to $2.8 million. I'd never touched a penny. Never even thought about it during the years when Camilla and Igor came to me with their sob stories about failed investments, about Igor's crypto losses, about the $300,000 in debt they'd somehow accumulated despite both having good jobs. I'd helped them. Of course I had. That's what mothers do. $15,000 here for a temporary cash flow problem. $25,000 there for an investment opportunity that never materialized. Another $30,000 for Igor's brilliant idea to flip houses during the pandemic. Looking back, I realized I'd given them almost $200,000 over the past 5 years. Money that came from my teacher's pension, from Social Security, from the small savings account Richard had left in my name. I'd lived simply, shopped carefully, denied myself vacations and new clothes, all so I could help my daughter and her husband build their future. And now they'd repaid me by forging my signature and stealing my most precious possession. My hands stopped trembling. Something inside me shifted, not breaking, but hardening, like steel cooling into its final form. I called Harold Jennings. "Gloria?" His voice was warm, concerned. "It's been months since I heard from you. How are you holding up?" "Harold, I need to see you immediately, and I need you to record this conversation." "Record? Gloria, what's happened?" "My daughter just told me she sold my Charleston house using a power of attorney I never signed." The silence on the other end stretched for long seconds. When Harold spoke again, his lawyer's voice had replaced the family friend's. "Gloria, please tell me you're joking. I've never been more serious in my life. Did you confront her about the signature?" "No. I played along, let her think I was confused, forgetful. I'm going to call her back, Harold, and I'm going to get her to confess everything while you record it." "Smart woman. Your husband always said you had the mind of a chess player." 20 minutes later, I called Camilla back. This time, I played the confused elderly mother perfectly. "Sweetie, I've been thinking about our conversation. You're probably right. I must have forgotten signing those papers. These memory issues are getting worse." Relief flooded her voice. "Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you understand. Igor was worried you'd be upset. Well, I'm a little concerned about the money. $420,000 is a lot. Don't worry about that. We invested it immediately in Igor's new crypto venture. It's going to triple within 6 months." My blood turned to ice water. They hadn't just stolen my house. They'd gambled the money on cryptocurrency. "That sounds wonderful, dear. And you're sure the power of attorney was legal?" "Absolutely. The bank didn't question it at all. Igor made sure the signature looked perfect." Perfect. She'd just confessed to fraud while Harold recorded every word. "Well," I said, injecting just the right amount of elderly confusion into my voice, "I suppose if it's all legal and proper." "It is, Mom. Trust me. You don't need to worry about anything anymore. Trust me." The irony was almost poetic. After I hung up, Harold and I sat in silence for a moment. Finally, he spoke. "Gloria, do you understand what she just admitted to? Wire fraud, document forgery, elder abuse. How many years are we talking about? With the amount involved and the interstate nature of the transaction, 15 to 20 years federal time." "Good," I said, and meant it. The next morning, Harold and I drove to the Fulton County Courthouse. By noon, we had a temporary injunction blocking the sale. By 3 p.m., the FBI had opened a case file. By 5 p.m., agents were interviewing the bank employees who'd processed the fraudulent documents. The investigation moved faster than I'd expected. Apparently, Camilla and Igor weren't exactly criminal masterminds. The forged signature was sloppy. Harold's handwriting expert identified at least 12 obvious discrepancies in under an hour. The bank's security cameras had captured Igor coaching Camilla on what to say. And most damning of all, they deposited the money into an account with both their names on it, leaving a perfect paper trail. But the real breakthrough came when the FBI discovered this wasn't their first fraud. Agent Sarah Martinez sat across from me in Harold's office, a thick file spread between us. "Mrs. Whitman, your case opened up something much bigger. Your daughter and son-in-law have been running investment scams targeting elderly clients for at least 3 years." My stomach dropped. "Other people?" "At least 12 victims that we've identified so far. They'd offer financial planning services, gain access to accounts, then gradually transfer money to themselves." Your case was different because they got greedy and went for one big score instead of the slow bleed. How much money? Preliminary estimates suggest over $2 million stolen from senior citizens across 3 states. I felt sick. My daughter, the little girl I'd read bedtime stories to, who'd cried in my arms over her first heartbreak, who I'd applauded at her college graduation, was a professional predator targeting people like me. Mrs. Whitman, Agent Martinez continued gently, your recording is the first direct confession we've obtained. Without your evidence, most of these victims would never see justice. So they weren't just thieves, they were career criminals, and I was about to bring down their entire operation. 3 weeks later, the story broke in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Local couple arrested in multi-state elder fraud scheme. Camilla's photo, my beautiful daughter in handcuffs, was on the front page. My phone rang constantly. Neighbors calling to express shock. Former colleagues asking if I was okay. Camilla's friends wanting to know if it was all some terrible mistake. But the call that mattered came from Igor's mother, Patricia Thompson. Gloria, I don't know what to say, she sobbed. I had no idea. Igor's father and I were mortified. Patricia, did they ever ask you for money? Constantly. We probably gave them $100,000 over the years. They said it was for investments, for business opportunities. So they'd been bleeding Igor's family dry, too. How many people had they convinced to invest in their lies? Patricia, I said gently, you should call Agent Martinez. You're a victim, too. The trial was set for March 2025, but something unexpected happened in January. Camila called me from jail. Mom. Her voice was small, broken. Nothing like the confident woman who'd stolen my house. What do you want, Camila? I want to apologize. It's too late for apologies. I know you'll never forgive me. But I need you to understand, it wasn't supposed to be you. We were desperate, drowning in debt, and Igor convinced me that you'd never miss the money from one house sale. So you decided to forge my signature and steal from me. We were going to pay it back. Igor swore the crypto investment would work, and we'd be able to give you even more money than we took. I almost laughed. Almost. Camilla, do you hear yourself? You stole my dead husband's gift to me to gamble on cryptocurrency. I know how it sounds, but no buts. You made your choice. Now face the consequences. I hung up, but the conversation haunted me. Was she truly sorry, or just sorry she got caught? Did it matter anymore? The morning after my call with Agent Martinez, I couldn't keep food down. Every time I tried to eat breakfast, the image of my daughter in handcuffs would flash through my mind, followed immediately by the faces of 12 other elderly victims I'd never met. My hands shook as I poured coffee, spilling it across the counter like my life had been spilled across the front page of the newspaper. Harold found me sitting on my kitchen floor at 7 a.m., still in my bathrobe, surrounded by legal documents and bank statements I'd spread across the linoleum. Gloria, when did you last sleep? What does it matter? I gestured at the papers. Look at this, Harold. I've been going through everything, every check I wrote them, every emergency they called me about. I picked up a bank statement from 2019, my finger tracing a $15,000 withdrawal. This was for Igor's business opportunity. Remember? He was going to flip houses. I remember. This one, I grabbed another statement, was $25,000 for Camilla's medical emergency. Except she never had any medical emergency, did she? She was already stealing from other people. The nausea hit me again, like a physical blow. I rushed to the sink, dry heaving over the dirty dishes from dinner I'd barely touched the night before. How long, Harold? I gasped between retches. How long was I funding their crime spree? Harold pulled out a chair and guided me into it, his lawyer's face grave with the weight of calculations he'd already made. Based on what Agent Martinez showed us, probably 3 years, maybe 4. So every time I helped them, every time I wrote a check because my daughter was in trouble, I was actually, what? Enabling them to hurt other people? Gloria, you couldn't have known, couldn't I? The anger was building again, hot and sharp in my chest. The signs were there. I just chose not to see them. I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window where my neighbor Mrs. Henderson was walking her dog. Normal people living normal lives while I discovered that my only child was a monster. Tell me about the other victims. Harold hesitated. Gloria, I don't think... Tell me. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder Agent Martinez had shared with us. The FBI cleared it because your testimony will be crucial for their cases too. He spread photographs across my kitchen table. 12 faces, 11 strangers, and my own reflection in the window above them. Margaret Chen, 78, San Francisco. They convinced her to invest $150,000 in a fake real estate venture. My stomach lurched. Margaret looked like she could have been one of my former teaching colleagues. Silver hair, kind eyes, the sort of woman who probably volunteered at libraries and made cookies for her grandchildren. Robert Kellerman, 82, Phoenix. $200,000 stolen through a fraudulent financial planning service. Another photo. This man reminded me of my father. The same proud posture, the same gentle expression that spoke of a lifetime of hard work and careful saving. Gloria, you don't need to see all of them. Yes, I do. My voice was steady now, cold as winter steel. I need to see every face. I need to know exactly who my daughter was hurting while I wrote her checks. Harold continued, his voice growing quieter with each name. Dorothy Walsh, 75, Memphis. Lost her entire retirement savings to them, $300,000. Frank Martinez, 70, Tucson. $180,000 stolen. He's living with his son now because he can't afford his own apartment anymore. Each name, each dollar amount, each destroyed life felt like a physical weight settling on my shoulders. These weren't just numbers in an FBI report. These were real people whose retirements had been stolen, whose independence had been destroyed, whose trust in their own judgment had been shattered, just like mine. How did they find these people? Online mostly. Facebook groups for seniors, church bulletin boards, community center classes. They'd identify targets who seemed financially stable, but isolated. Isolated. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Is that how Camilla saw me? An isolated old woman, ripe for exploitation? Harold, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Of course. Do you think she ever loved me? Or was I just another mark? Harold was quiet for a long moment, studying the photos spread across my table. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of 40 years practicing law and seeing the worst of human nature. I think she loved the idea of you, Gloria. The mother who would always bail her out, who would always forgive, who would always choose her well-being over your own. But love the real you, the woman with your own needs, your own dreams, your own boundaries? He shook his head. No, I don't think she ever saw that person clearly enough to love her. The truth of it hit me like cold water. For years, I'd been playing a role in my daughter's life. The inexhaustible ATM, the eternally forgiving mother, the woman who existed solely to make Camilla's problems disappear. There's something else, Harold said carefully. Something Agent Martinez discovered yesterday. My blood chilled. What now? They found communications between Camilla and Igor discussing your other assets. They knew about the Charleston house for months before they stole it. How could they know? I never told them about Richard's trust. They hired a private investigator to research your finances. Someone named Derek Carlisle. He's been tracking your spending patterns, your bank accounts, even monitoring your mail. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling like I might faint. They were spying on me? For at least 6 months. They have detailed reports on your daily routines, your shopping habits, your doctor appointments. They knew exactly how much money you had and where it was located. But they didn't know about Richard's trust. No, that's why they only went after the Charleston property. It was the only asset they could identify and access. I thought about all the times in the past year when Camilla had called, asking casual questions about my day, my activities, my finances. Questions I'd answered honestly because she was my daughter and I had nothing to hide. Except she wasn't gathering information out of love or concern. She was conducting surveillance. Harold, show me the reports. Gloria, I really don't think... Show me. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker. The first page was a typed summary with my name at the top like a case file. Subject, Gloria Ann Whitman, age, 70 marital status. Widow estimated net worth, 500,000, 750,000 vulnerabilities. Social isolation, strong emotional attachment to deceased husband's memory, pattern of financial enabling toward daughter. The clinical language made my skin crawl. They'd reduced my entire life to a psychological profile, a roadmap for exploitation. I flipped through pages of photographs taken without my knowledge. Me at the grocery store, me at the bank, me tending Richard's roses in my backyard. The invasion felt more intimate and violating than the theft itself. "There's a timeline, too," Harold said softly. I found it 3 pages in. A month-by-month plan for gradually increasing their requests for money, building up to the big ask for the Charleston house. March 2024, test with small emergency request, $5,000. April 2024, larger business opportunity, $15,000. May 2024, medical scare, $10,000. June 2024, investment opportunity, $25,000. July 2024, building relationship, no financial requests. August 2024, create sense of urgency around house taxes. September 2024, introduce power of attorney concept. October 2024, secure POA signature. November 2024, execute house sale. It was all planned. Every call, every crisis, every tearful conversation about their financial struggles. They'd been manipulating me with the precision of a military operation. "The medical scare in May," I whispered, remembering Camilla's panicked call about needing money for urgent tests that her insurance wouldn't cover. There was no medical scare. No. According to their communications, Igor suggested that storyline because you'd be most likely to respond to a health emergency. My daughter had lied about being sick, had let me lose sleep worrying about her, had accepted my frantic concern and desperate offers to help, all while knowing it was a fabrication designed to steal my money. The betrayal felt bottomless, an abyss that kept revealing new depths every time I thought I'd reached the bottom. "Harold, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "I want to meet the other victims, the ones who are willing to see me." "Gloria, that might not be wise. It could be very emotional. My daughter destroyed their lives using techniques she practiced on me, using money I gave her. I need to look them in the eye and tell them I'm sorry. You have nothing to apologize for, don't I?" I gestured at the photographs, the timeline, the careful documentation of my exploitation. "I funded this operation, Harold. Every check I wrote made their crimes possible. You were a victim too. I was the training ground." The meeting with the other victims was arranged for December 8, 2024, in a conference room at Harold's law firm. Agent Martinez had contacted 8 of the 12 victims, and 6 agreed to participate in what she called a victim impact preparation session. I arrived 30 minutes early, my hands trembling as I clutched a folder containing printed apologies I'd written to each person. Harold found me in the parking lot, sitting in my car, staring at the building. "Second thoughts?" he asked gently. "No. I just need a moment to prepare for the fact that I'm about to meet people whose lives my daughter destroyed. Gloria, remember what we discussed. You are not responsible for her choices." But when I walked into that conference room and saw 6 elderly faces turn toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to outright hostility, responsibility felt irrelevant. These people had been broken by someone I'd raised, someone I'd funded, someone who carried my name. Margaret Chen spoke first, her voice sharp as broken glass. "So, you're the mother." "Yes, I'm Gloria Whitman, the mother who gave them money to steal from us." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I could have defended myself, explained that I didn't know, that I was a victim too. Instead, I opened my folder and began reading. "Mrs. Chen, you lost $150,000 to my daughter and her husband. Money you'd saved working as a seamstress for 40 years. Money you planned to leave to your grandchildren for college." My voice cracked, but I continued. "I know my apology means nothing. I know it doesn't bring back what you lost. But I need you to know that if I could trade places with you, if I could give you back every dollar they stole and take your pain instead, I would do it without hesitation." Margaret's expression softened slightly, but Robert Kellerman, the 82-year-old from Phoenix, leaned forward with fire in his eyes. "Your apology is nice, Mrs. Whitman. But where was your parental supervision when your daughter was building a criminal enterprise? Where were the questions when they kept asking you for money?" "You're right," I said simply. "I failed. I enabled them. I chose to believe their lies because believing was easier than confronting the truth about who my daughter had become." Dorothy Walsh, the 75-year-old from Memphis who'd lost her entire retirement, surprised me by reaching across the table to touch my hand. Honey, we all failed. I wrote them a check for $300,000 because a young woman called me Grandma Dorothy and told me she needed help. We all wanted to believe we were helping someone we cared about. But I was helping someone I cared about, I whispered. That's what makes it worse. You were deceived by strangers. I was deceived by my own child. Frank Martinez, whose son had driven up from Tucson for the meeting, shook his head slowly. Mrs. Whitman, with respect, you're missing the point. The question isn't who was more deceived. The question is what we do now to make sure they never hurt anyone else. Agent Martinez, who'd been quietly taking notes, looked up from her legal pad. Actually, Frank raises an important point. Mrs. Whitman, your testimony is crucial, not just for your own case, but for securing convictions that will put your daughter and son-in-law away for decades. How can I help? First, we need to document every financial transaction between you and them going back 5 years. Second, we need you to detail the psychological manipulation tactics they used. And third, she hesitated. There's something new we discovered yesterday that we need to discuss. Harold and I exchanged glances. What now? We found additional evidence on Igor's computer, evidence that suggests their plans for you went far beyond financial fraud. My blood turned to ice. What kind of plans? Agent Martinez opened a laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was an email thread between Camilla and Igor, dated 6 months ago. From camilla.thompson.email@gmail.com to igor.t.business@yahoo. Come subject. Long-term planning. I've been thinking about what Derek found regarding Mom's health insurance and life policies. If we play this right, we won't need to keep bleeding her slowly. One major medical emergency could solve everything permanently. My vision blurred. I read the email 3 times before the words fully penetrated. From igor.tbusiness@yahoo.com to camilla.thompson.email@gmail.com. Subject, long-term planning risky, but the payout would be significant. How much life insurance does she carry? From camilla.thompson.email@gmail.com to igor.tbusiness@yahoo.com. Subject, long-term planning, $500K through the Teachers Union, plus another $200K policy Richard set up years ago. But here's the interesting part. I found paperwork in her house showing she's been making me the primary beneficiary on everything since Dad died. She trusts me completely. The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling like I might vomit. They were planning to kill me, I whispered. The emails suggest they were considering it, Agent Martinez said carefully. We found additional searches on Igor's computer for untraceable heart attack methods and insulin overdose symptoms in non-diabetics. Harold's face had gone completely white. Jesus Christ, we're not just talking about fraud anymore. No, we're talking about conspiracy to commit murder. Margaret Chen, who'd been reading over my shoulder, gasped audibly. Your own daughter was planning to murder you for insurance money? I couldn't speak. The betrayal I'd thought was bottomless had just revealed another level of depravity I couldn't have imagined. My daughter, my baby girl who I'd rocked to sleep, who I'd cheered for at school plays, who I'd taught to ride a bicycle, had been researching ways to kill me. There's more, Agent Martinez continued. We believe they may have already tested some of these methods. What do you mean? Mrs. Whitman, do you remember feeling unusually ill after any recent visits from your daughter? Nausea, dizziness, heart palpitations. I thought back through the fog of horror. Last Thanksgiving, Camilla cooked dinner at my house. I got violently sick afterward. Food poisoning, I thought. How sick? I ended up in the emergency room. They couldn't figure out what caused it. The doctors said it looked like some kind of toxic reaction, but they couldn't identify the source. Agent Martinez made a note. We're going to need your medical records from that incident. And Mrs. Whitman, I need to ask, did you experience any heart irregularities, chest pain, difficulty breathing? All of it. The doctor said I was lucky I came in when I did. A few more hours and I stopped. The implication hitting me like a physical blow. And you might have died from what appeared to be natural causes in an elderly woman with a pre-existing heart condition. The room erupted in shocked voices, but I heard them as if from underwater. Robert Kellerman was swearing in Spanish. Dorothy Walsh was crying. Margaret Chen was demanding to know if her own family members were safe. But all I could think about was the way Camilla had fussed over me that Thanksgiving, insisting I eat more, bringing me special tea she'd made just for you, Mom, staying overnight to make sure you're okay. I'd been so grateful for her attention, so happy to have my daughter caring for me again. She'd been trying to murder me, and when it didn't work, she'd stayed to make sure I didn't suspect anything. Harold, I said when I could finally speak, I need to know about Richard's life insurance policies. What about them? Agent Martinez said Camilla thought she was the beneficiary. But Richard changed those policies before he died, didn't he? When he set up the trust? Harold's expression confirmed my suspicions before he spoke. Yes, the beneficiaries on all policies were changed to the trust in 2009. Camilla has no legal claim to any of it. So if she'd succeeded in killing me, she would have gotten nothing. Richard specifically structured everything to prevent exactly this scenario. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. Even from the grave, my husband had been protecting me from our own daughter. There's something else, Agent Martinez said. We found evidence that they weren't planning to stop with you. She pulled up another email thread, this one more recent, from igortbusiness@yahoo.com to camila.thompson.email@gmail.com. Subject: Backup plans. If your mom's situation doesn't work out, we need other options. What about Harold Jennings? He's old, wealthy, and trusts you. And that Margaret Chen woman from San Francisco. Derek says she has more assets than we originally thought. They were planning to expand their operation, to kill more people. Margaret, I turned to the seamstress from San Francisco. They were targeting you next. Her face went ashen. What? After they finished with me, you were going to be their next victim. Margaret stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. I can't. She rushed from the room. Dorothy Walsh followed her, and soon I was left with Harold, Agent Martinez, and the remaining victims, all of us staring at emails that documented a murder conspiracy so casual, so calculating, that it defied comprehension. How many people were they planning to kill? Frank Martinez asked. Agent Martinez scrolled through more files. Based on their communications, they had a list of 12 targets, all elderly, all wealthy, all isolated. They were building what they called a retirement business, systematic murder for profit disguised as natural deaths and accidents. A retirement business, Robert repeated numbly. They were planning to make careers out of murdering old people. Yes, and Mrs. Whitman was going to be their proof of concept. If they could successfully kill her and collect the insurance money without detection, they planned to refine their methods and expand to other victims. I thought about all the times I'd worried about Camilla's future, about whether she'd be financially secure, about what would happen to her when I was gone. I'd spent years planning how to provide for her after my death, never imagining she was spending those same years planning how to cause it. Agent Martinez, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my head. What do you need from me to make sure they never get the chance to hurt anyone? Everything, Mrs. Whitman. Every conversation, every transaction, every lie they told you. We're building a federal case that will put them away for life, but we need your complete cooperation. You have it. Harold leaned forward. Gloria, there's something else we need to discuss. The trust Richard left you. It's larger than we originally calculated. My head snapped toward him. What do you mean? I've been reviewing the paperwork since this investigation began. There are assets I hadn't fully accounted for. Properties that have appreciated significantly, investments that matured, rental income that's been accumulating. How much larger? The trust is currently worth approximately $4.2 million. The room went silent. Even Agent Martinez looked stunned. 4.2 million? I repeated. Yes. And Gloria, there's something else. Something Richard specifically instructed me to tell you only if your life was ever threatened by family members. Harold opened his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written in Richard's handwriting. He left you a letter. With shaking hands, I broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Richard's familiar script filled the page. My dearest Gloria, if Harold is giving you this letter, it means someone close to you has betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. I'm sorry, my love. I hoped I was wrong to worry about this possibility. The money in the trust is yours to do with as you wish, but I have one request. Use it to protect other people from whatever happened to you. Don't let our daughter's choices destroy your generous heart, but don't let your generosity destroy your safety either. You are stronger than you know, smarter than you believe, and more valuable than anyone who would hurt you could ever understand. Use that strength now. All my love, Richard. I folded the letter carefully, my hands no longer shaking. Something had shifted inside me during the reading, not breaking, but crystallizing, like carbon becoming diamond under pressure. Agent Martinez, I said, I want to do more than just testify against them. What do you mean? I want to help you catch other people doing this, other families destroying their elderly relatives for money. I want to set up a foundation, hire investigators, create a network that protects seniors from financial predators. That's actually brilliant. With your resources and experience as a victim, you could create something unprecedented. Harold was nodding slowly. The Whitman Foundation for Elder Protection. It could fund legal aid, investigation services, safe housing for victims, and psychological support, Dorothy Walsh added, having returned to the room with Margaret, because the emotional damage lasts longer than the financial damage. Yes, I said, feeling purpose crystallize alongside my resolve. We'll catch them before they kill anyone. We'll protect people like us before they become victims like us. Agent Martinez closed her laptop. Mrs. Whitman, I think your daughter just made the biggest mistake of her life. How so? She thought she was targeting a helpless old woman. Instead, she just created her own worst nightmare, a victim with resources, connections, and an unshakable motivation for justice. I looked around the room at the faces of people whose lives Camilla had tried to destroy, people who were now becoming allies in something larger than revenge. When is the trial? I asked. March 15th, 2025. But Mrs. Whitman, given what we've discovered about the murder conspiracy, they're probably going to try to plead guilty to avoid the death penalty. Will you recommend accepting a plea deal? That depends. What kind of justice are you looking for? I thought about Richard's letter, about the 12 potential victims on Igor's target list, about all the elderly people who were still vulnerable to predators like my daughter. I want them in prison for life, I said, and I want everyone to know their story. I want their case to become a warning that saves other families from what happened to us. Harold smiled grimly. Then we reject any plea deal. We go to trial. We present every piece of evidence, and we make sure the whole world knows what they did. Even if it means publicly admitting that my daughter tried to murder me? Especially then, said Margaret Chen, her voice steel strong. Because somewhere out there is another daughter planning to murder her mother for insurance money. And when she reads about Camilla Thompson going to prison for life, maybe she'll think twice. I nodded, feeling the last pieces of my old life, the life where I was a trusting mother who enabled her daughter's crimes, finally crumble away. Then that's what we'll do. March 15th, 2025. Federal Courthouse, Fulton County, Atlanta. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. I sat in the front row, wearing the navy blue dress Richard had bought me for our last anniversary, the one I'd been saving for special occasions. Today felt like the most special occasion of my life, the day my daughter would face justice for trying to murder me. Harold squeezed my hand as the bailiff announced, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Williams." Judge Williams was a severe-looking black woman in her 60s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through lies. She scanned the courtroom with the authority of someone who'd seen every kind of human depravity and wasn't impressed by any of it. Be seated. We are here today for the case of United States versus Camilla Thompson and Igor Thompson, charged with conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, elder abuse, and racketeering under the RICO Act. My daughter sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her once perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Igor sat beside her, his expensive suit replaced with identical prison clothing. Neither of them had looked at me since entering the courtroom. Prosecutor David Chen, Margaret's son, who'd specifically requested this case, stood to address the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next week, you will hear evidence of one of the most callous criminal enterprises ever prosecuted in this district. The defendants didn't just steal money from elderly victims. They researched methods to murder them. They tested poison on one victim. And they compiled a target list of 12 seniors they planned to kill for profit. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Several reporters scribbled frantically in their notebooks. The prosecution will prove that Camilla Thompson attempted to murder her own mother using insulin, that she forged legal documents to steal a $420,000 property, and that she and her husband operated a murder-for-profit scheme targeting vulnerable seniors across 3 states. Camilla's defense attorney, a tired-looking public defender named James Walsh, stood for his opening statement. "My client may have made poor financial decisions, Your Honor, but the prosecution's claims of murder conspiracy are based on speculative emails and circumstantial evidence. Mrs. Thompson loves her mother and would never—" "Objection!" Prosecutor Chen shot to his feet. "The defense is testifying, not making an opening statement." "Sustained, Mr. Walsh. Stick to what you intend to prove, not what you believe." The first day of testimony featured Agent Martinez walking the jury through the emails, the timeline, the evidence of systematic fraud. But the moment that made headlines came when Harold was called to testify about my assets. "Mr. Jennings," Prosecutor Chen said, "please tell the court about Mrs. Whitman's true financial situation." Harold adjusted his glasses and pulled out a thick folder. "Mrs. Gloria Whitman is the sole beneficiary of the Richard Whitman Trust, established in 2009. What is the current value of this trust?" "As of today's valuation, $4.2 million. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Camilla's head snapped up, her mouth falling open in shock. She turned to stare at me for the first time all day, her eyes wide with what looked like genuine surprise. "Mr. Jennings, was the defendant aware of this trust?" "No. The trust was specifically structured to remain confidential until Mrs. Whitman's natural death. So when Mrs. Thompson attempted to steal her mother's Charleston property, she was unaware that her mother possessed assets worth nearly 10 times that amount." I watched my daughter's face cycle through emotions, shock, disbelief, and then something that looked like rage. She leaned over to whisper furiously to her attorney, who shook his head and pushed her back into her seat. Prosecutor Chen continued, "Mr. Jennings, in your professional opinion, what would have happened if the defendants had succeeded in murdering Mrs. Whitman? They would have received nothing. Upon Mrs. Whitman's death, the trust assets would have been distributed to several charities, specifically to prevent inheritance-motivated crimes. So their murder plot would have been financially pointless? Completely pointless." The irony was perfect. Camilla had tried to kill me for money I'd never told her about, money she never would have received anyway. The second day brought testimony from the other victims. Margaret Chen's testimony was particularly devastating. "Mrs. Chen," Prosecutor Chen said gently, "please tell the court how you met the defendants." "Camilla called me in January 2023. She said she was a financial advisor who specialized in helping seniors maximize their retirement savings." Margaret's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "She was so sweet, so caring. She called me Grandma Margaret and said I reminded her of her own grandmother." "How much money did you ultimately give them?" $150,000, my entire life savings." "And what did you receive in return?" "Nothing. No investments, no returns. The company they claimed to represent didn't exist." When it was time for cross-examination, Camilla's attorney tried to suggest that Margaret had willingly invested in a risky venture. "Mrs. Chen, didn't you sign documents acknowledging that all investments carry risk?" "I signed papers I was told were for setting up my investment account. They weren't warnings about risk, they were authorizations for theft." "But you did sign them voluntarily?" Margaret leaned forward, her voice carrying 60 years of hard-earned wisdom. "Young man, when someone lies to you about what you're signing, it's not voluntary, it's fraud. And when they call you grandma while they're stealing your life savings, it's evil." The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Williams banged her gavel for order, but I saw her suppress a smile. The third day was when I testified. Prosecutor Chen walked me through the timeline of my relationship with Camilla, the pattern of financial requests, the forged power of attorney. But the moment that silenced the entire courtroom came when he asked about Thanksgiving 2023. "Mrs. Whitman, please describe what happened after dinner that evening." "I became violently ill, nausea, heart palpitations, difficulty breathing. My daughter insisted on driving me to the hospital. What did the doctors find? They said I showed signs of insulin poisoning, but they couldn't understand why since I'm not diabetic. How did you feel about your daughter's care during this incident? My voice caught. I was grateful. She stayed with me all night, held my hand, told me she loved me. I thought it was the closest we'd been in years. Mrs. Whitman, based on the evidence you've heard in this trial, what do you now believe happened that night? The courtroom was dead silent. I looked directly at Camilla, who was staring at her hands. I believe my daughter tried to murder me. And when it didn't work, she stayed to make sure I didn't suspect anything. For the first time since the trial began, Camilla looked up and met my eyes. What I saw there wasn't remorse or love or even anger. It was calculation. She was still trying to figure out how to manipulate the situation to her advantage. That look told me everything I needed to know about who my daughter really was. During cross-examination, the defense attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive mother seeking revenge for normal family conflicts. Mrs. Whitman, isn't it true that you were angry about your daughter's lifestyle choices? No. Didn't you disapprove of her husband? I had concerns, but I supported their marriage. Isn't this prosecution really about your hurt feelings over normal family financial disagreements? I paused, considering the question seriously. Then I pulled out a folder I'd brought to the witness stand. Mr. Walsh, may I show the court something? Judge Williams nodded. I opened the folder and pulled out a handwritten list. This is a record of every dollar I gave my daughter and her husband over the past 5 years. I began reading. March 2020, $15,000 for Igor's business opportunity. June 2020, $8,000 for car repairs. September 2020, $12,000 for credit card debt. December 2020, $5,000 for Christmas expenses. April 2021, $20,000 for home renovation. August 2021, $10,000 for medical emergency. November 2021, $7,000 for job loss assistance. The list continued for 2 full pages. When I finished, the total was $247,000. Mr. Walsh, does this look like the behavior of a vindictive mother? Or does it look like the behavior of someone who loved her daughter unconditionally and was systematically exploited for that love? The defense attorney had no response. The trial's climax came on day 4 when the prosecution played the recorded phone call between Camilla and me, the one where she confessed to using the forged power of attorney. Camilla's voice filled the courtroom. I used the power of attorney you gave me at Christmas. We needed the money urgently. My voice. What power of attorney? Camilla. The one you signed, Mom. Don't you remember? You were having those memory lapses. When the recording ended, several jurors were shaking their heads in disgust. But the moment that would be replayed on news programs across the country came during the prosecution's closing argument. Prosecutor Chen stood before the jury with printouts of Igor's computer searches. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the defendants were researching while Mrs. Whitman was writing them checks. Untraceable heart attack methods. Insulin overdose symptoms in non-diabetics. How long does digitoxin stay in system? Elderly woman dies alone statistics. Life insurance payout timeline after death. He paused, letting the words sink in. These aren't the searches of someone planning financial fraud. These are the searches of someone planning murder. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of wire fraud in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of elder abuse under the RICO Act, how do you find? Guilty. Camilla collapsed at the verdict. Igor remained stoic, but I saw his hands shaking as the bailiff approached with handcuffs. Judge Williams scheduled sentencing for the following week. As the courtroom cleared, Camilla was led past my row in shackles. She stopped and looked at me one final time. Mom, she whispered, I'm sorry. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of 70 years and the strength of $4 million and the love of a husband who'd protected me even from the grave. No, I said clearly enough for everyone still in the courtroom to hear, you're sorry you got caught. And I walked away from my daughter for the last time. September 23rd, 2025, Savannah, Georgia. I wake every morning now to the sound of seagulls and the smell of salt air drifting through the windows of my cottage on Tybee Island. The house is small, just 2 bedrooms, a sunroom, and a kitchen that overlooks the marsh. But it's mine in a way nothing has ever been mine before. 6 months ago, I was Gloria Whitman, the betrayed mother, the victim whose daughter tried to murder her for insurance money. Today, I'm still Gloria Whitman, but I'm something else too. The founder of the fastest-growing elder protection organization in the Southeast. The Whitman Foundation for Elder Protection opened its doors in June 2025, funded with $3.2 million from Richard's Trust. We operate out of a converted Victorian mansion in downtown Savannah, with satellite offices planned for Charleston, Atlanta, and Birmingham. Our mission is simple: identify, investigate, and prosecute family members who financially exploit elderly relatives. In 3 months, we've opened 127 cases. The transformation started with my appearance. Gone is the gray-haired woman in shapeless cardigans who used to hide in her Atlanta kitchen. I cut my hair into a modern silver bob that frames my face instead of hiding it. My new wardrobe consists of well-tailored blazers in jewel tones, comfortable but stylish flats, and glasses with fashionable tortoiseshell frames that make me look intellectual rather than invisible. But the real change is in my posture. I stand straighter now, speak louder, take up space. Margaret Chen told me last week that I look like someone who's never been afraid of anything in her life. If only she knew. This morning, I'm reviewing case files in my sunroom when my assistant, Rebecca Santos, calls with an update on our latest investigation. Gloria, we've got him. The grandson in the Tallahassee case. He's been forging his grandmother's signature on Social Security checks for 8 months. How much? $23,000 so far. But here's the interesting part. His girlfriend posted photos on Instagram showing off a new car and jewelry. The timestamps match exactly with the fraudulent withdrawals. I smile, feeling that familiar surge of satisfaction that comes with catching predators in their lies. Send everything to the local FBI office. And Rebecca, make sure the grandmother knows we're filing for restitution of the full amount plus damages. Already done. She cried when I told her. Happy tears or sad tears? Happy. She said nobody had ever fought for her before. After hanging up, I walked to my kitchen to make coffee. The routine has become sacred to me, grinding beans Richard would have loved, using the French press that was a wedding gift 47 years ago, standing at the window to watch fishing boats head out for their morning catch. The peace I feel now would have been impossible 6 months ago. Then I was consumed with rage, with betrayal, with the crushing weight of discovering that my daughter was a monster. Now, I've learned to channel that energy into something constructive. Camilla and Igor were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge called their crimes a betrayal of family bonds so fundamental that it shakes the foundation of civilized society. They're currently in separate federal facilities, Camilla in Alabama, Igor in North Carolina. Neither has attempted to contact me. Their financial empire collapsed completely. The FBI seized all their assets, including the house I'd unknowingly helped them buy, the cars, the investment accounts funded with stolen money. Igor's cryptocurrency ventures were revealed to be Ponzi schemes that bilked investors out of an additional $1.8 million. Their victims are still filing lawsuits. But the most satisfying consequence isn't their imprisonment or their bankruptcy. It's the fact that their story has become a cautionary tale that's protecting other families. The Foundation's website features a section called The Thompson Case Study, which details exactly how Camilla and Igor operated. We've had over 50,000 visitors from adult children who recognize their own behavior in the tactics we describe. 12 of them have voluntarily entered counseling programs we recommend. 3 have returned stolen money to their parents. Yesterday, I received a letter from a woman in Oregon whose son had been pressuring her to sign over her house. She'd read about Camilla online and realized she was being manipulated. She contacted our hotline, and we connected her with local resources that helped her understand her legal rights. Your daughter's crime saved my life, she wrote. Because of your story, I knew what to look for. That's the strange gift hidden in this nightmare. Camilla's betrayal has become the tool that protects other parents from similar betrayals. My phone rings, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID shows Harold's number. Good morning, Gloria. How's retirement treating you? This isn't retirement, Harold. This is the most important work I've ever done. Fair point. I'm calling because I have news about the Charleston house. My heart skips. The house where Richard and I were happiest, where we scattered his ashes, where Camilla stole my memories along with my property rights. What kind of news? The sale has been officially voided. The property is yours again, free and clear. The buyers are being compensated from Camilla and Igor's seized assets. I close my eyes, feeling something loosen in my chest that I didn't realize was still tight. Harold, I want to donate it. Donate it? Gloria, that property is worth… I know what it's worth. I want to donate it to the foundation. We can use it as a safe house for elderly victims who need temporary shelter while we investigate their cases. Harold is quiet for a moment. That's actually brilliant. A place where seniors can stay while we build cases against their abusers. Exactly. Richard always said that house was meant to be a sanctuary. Now it can be one for people who need it most. After hanging up, I walk to my small garden where I've planted the same roses Richard grew in Charleston. They're not quite ready to bloom yet, but I can see the buds forming. My phone buzzes with a text from Margaret Chen. Saw the news story about the foundation in the San Francisco Chronicle. You're famous, and more importantly, you're making a difference. The news story she's referring to was published yesterday in newspapers across the country. The headline read, "Attempted murder victim turns tragedy into mission." It featured a photo of me standing in front of the foundation's headquarters, flanked by 6 of the seniors we've helped recover stolen assets. I look like someone who's never been a victim, someone who's never been afraid, someone who's never doubted her own worth. Sometimes I catch my reflection and don't recognize the woman staring back. The Gloria who trusted blindly, who enabled destructively, who chose peace over truth. That woman died in a kitchen in Atlanta when her daughter's lies finally shattered against reality. This Gloria, the one with the silver bob and the steel spine and the mission to protect vulnerable seniors. This Gloria was forged in fire and tempered by betrayal and strengthened by the decision to transform pain into purpose. I'm 70 years old. I have $1 million left in Richard's trust after funding the foundation. I live alone in a cottage by the sea, surrounded by roses and righteousness and the satisfaction of work that matters. My daughter tried to murder me for money she never would have inherited anyway. Instead, she gave me the gift of knowing exactly who I am when everything I thought I knew about love and family is stripped away. I am Gloria Whitman. I am stronger than my betrayals. I am more valuable than my bank account. And I am living proof that some endings are actually beginnings in disguise.